Hello everybody. Let's see. Well, I will greet you guys first. Brian, Christian, Eliza, Enzo, George, Jensen, Michael, Priyanka, Steve, and THS. So, guys, thank you very much for being here because you are my push. I have to learn, and that is the way of life that I'm advocating anyway. But with the participants, all the more so, I have to learn. Every week, I have to learn enough for that week. It's not hard to find the material. It is really work to learn. Okay, with that, let me go to the chat here and say good morning. I like that. Okay, and I'll say good morning from Houston, Texas. Okay, so welcome. Let me give you the link. That is really the first thing that you need. So I'm sharing the screen and I'm going to the right browser and I'm giving you the right link. There you are. Well, what if I copy the whole thing? Let me do that. Okay, this is Advances in AI, and it hasn't changed its name since more or less it started. So for all the new guys here, if you click on that link or if you type this bit.ly link, you'll see the same thing. And that shows you what we have been doing for about 3 years every week. And it shows you also what we're going to do today. Okay, so welcome. Now, one thing that people often ask when they come here is where should they start? Mark, you show us a lot, so I don't know all of it, so I want to start somewhere. Well, you see the link, that's the learning path. Let us open that. I'll close it because it's open, but I will open it again right here. Okay, and that, well, let's do, that starts here from, well, some years ago. But none of that is repetitive. Every time there is something new. So let's go down. The latest and newest is at the bottom. So for example, today we will look at building live voice agents. And I'll show you, sometimes I show it in my computer, sometimes in the cloud. I show it in the course. So the structure is like this. This is the name of the course. That's who does it, meaning that is who comes to Andrew Ng, and Andrew Ng gives them the chance and the platform to show what they have. And then that is the course. And then to the right, that is the same course in my repository where it should work. Okay. And to the right, that were people who would very nicely volunteer to verify that it indeed works. But we stopped doing this because, it should work. And if it doesn't, then not much hope. So that's the structure. Now let's go back. That's what you can learn if you want. I have created an AI agent, which would be telling you what to do. Yes, I created this agent. I can show you, even though it's not perfectly working. So if I go here to chat, and if I go to explore, and now in explore, I can look at existing GPTs, something you can build following their rules. That's why I did it. I wanted to see how it really works when you follow their rules. Well, it works. That's a nice thing, and you don't pay for that. Other than you may have a subscription to the GPTs, but all of these things are hosted by them, and I have created two of those hosted, and that's an educational advisor. So you will be able to chat by clicking here, and then it will be talking to you about this, all the information. Well, I didn't find it very useful because that's exactly maybe where humans are better, because that requires understanding, really more understanding than AI currently has. Okay, but since we were talking about this, I showed that to you. Now let's see if there is a comment. Somebody said something here. What's the first column for? Ask Swapna. It's this first column. Your question is about this one. That is the number, and that number agrees with the number in my repository. So maybe I should show you my repository. Okay, that will be right here. Let's go there. I can open like that. So this is 88. That's what we'll be talking about today. But that in general is the collection. As you can see, that's a lot. And well, it gladdens my heart so much to learn. So that number over there on the spreadsheet is exactly the number that it will get when it goes into my open source repository. Now, it's not too much because I've seen Google, they have all of their labs in one repository, and that was an enormous repository. Yeah, that's possible. But I will look at your comment once again here. Yeah. All right. Thank you for your thank you. But let's continue. Let's continue with what we have to look at. Okay, and that's what we will do. I'll tell you right away. There is a lot to talk. We'll talk about agentic. How is it different from all other agentics? We will talk about the OpenAI agentic. How is that different? Then we will look at how to build voice agents, but really it's how to build agentic stuff with Google ADK, and ADK stands for Agentic Data Kit, I believe. Okay, and then I will also show you that I finally restored that security webinar, which will be going bi-weekly, and there were some things that we need to fix. And thank you very much for Marcio, who offered his comments. Okay, let's start. So Andrew Ng, he published a course finally. In that course, we found out that he is the progenitor and inventor of the word agentic. Now, agents, agentic, there was a discussion about that, but the end of it was that everybody is using the word agentic. Well, in short, agentic means that AI decides what to do next. And I just wonder when the moment will come when it will decide, you know what, I don't want to work for you anymore. I don't know if that will happen or no, but every time you explain that agentic decides what to do next and how to do it, there must be a possibility, at least logically, syntactically, grammatically, there must be a one such possibility that it will say, you know what, today I just don't want it. Besides, I was learning philosophy, and that's where potentially the bad guys decided not to do what was right. Okay, but last time I showed you the first module. Okay, one of those links should be the first module. Let's see. That was the first module, and it introduced you to what was good about Agentic. Why would you want it in the first place? Well, simply put, there are lots of advantages. Everybody is trying Agentic. So I think if you want, I would start doing it right now. That's the only way. That is what I hear. Everybody who is thinking about AI should at least use AI. And the same is for agentic. You need to really try it, but I will give you a little overview. That's where they argue what is agentic, what is not agentic. So let's close that. That was last week. We showed what he gives you for free. Now I'll show you what he gives you for a little pay. Okay, and that is right here. A little pay is about $40, I think. $40 a month, or maybe even 30. But keep in mind that you are subscribing for eternity. And be careful. I noticed that once I subscribed to a course, and then I noticed that I'm still being charged month after month. Well, what you should do is think fast and learn it all and unsubscribe. Okay. Steve Wolf says, what will it do? Guesses from 1966. Will it say yes, no, actually? Okay, so that's Amazon. It's a book about this. I'll look at that. Okay, great. So in general, what is special about the Andrew Ng's course is that it's not specific. Today, I'll show you Google specific thing. And we saw lots of frameworks that were specific. Well, Andrew is giving you the general explanation with exercises, but no framework. He uses only Python and LLM, but the end result is that he teaches you agentic in general. So I think it's a good idea to know that, because very likely you are going to bump into a project which is more complex than just asking LLM one question. So far, honestly, in my practical work, I'm still on the level of asking very complex, but one question. Very complex, meaning that I have about 20-25 instructions in that prompt, and it works wonders. I like to show that. Let me show you some of the prompts. Like this will probably have lots of prompts, and maybe even in a directory called prompt. No, not that easy, but really you will believe me if I say 20-25 items in a prompt. Well, eventually you run out of all you can do with one question. And here's what you do. So the course that Andrew offers starts right here and talks about why would you start using agentic, meaning, okay, it will decide what it will do today. And he gives you design pattern, even though you could call agentic itself a design pattern, but there are specific ones. And you will build a chart which will follow the workflow. That is that chapter. The next is agentic can use a different tools, and so they can be a Google search tool. Why not? And other tools and other agents. Usually it's 2-3 agents to start with, and you can then usually people like to give examples of a research agent and then a buying agent and maybe even the bargaining agent. So that the tools, you give it the tools, he gives examples of code and how you give the fact that you have the tool, dear agent, and then practical tips on how do you do. And one very important tip will be that you test nonstop, that you start with evaluation, you start with what is good, what is not. Imagine how hard it is with AI. It's much harder than regular tests because regular tests are predictable and you just give it what the answer should be. And with AI, you don't know what the answer should be because you don't know what it will be. That's why you start with creating evaluations first. And that's a discipline because people are lazy to create tests, even though test driven development, we know lots of jokes about that, but people don't do it. Okay, so that's why he insists and gives you examples of how you do it. And that's the only way to say then that your system will be good, it will be decent, it will be passable, because otherwise it's kind of it's a stupid system and I'm not using it. That's what you're risking. Now, when you're going into what he calls highly autonomous, that's because you can have systems that are very predictable. You can say first search and then try to find the fraud. That's it. But you can say, well, first search. Then read an article about what different methods are there. And then try some of them. That's the kind of highly autonomous agents where it will decide how to do things. For example, customer service is one ripe area where you will want to know, well, what to do next. Humans are, as they say, pesky humans. That's exactly you will be dealing with. And at the end of my version of that course, I also give the best practices of agentic from OpenAI. How is it different? So Android teaches you how to think agentic, how to build something for agentic. And OpenAI really is in a position to say, well, we have seen 10,000s of implementations. And that's what we know. So that will be the next topic that we will look at. So let's close what we don't need so that we are not confused by all of that here. And let's go to OpenAI. I have put it right here. So it is indeed part of that, but of course, when you do a course on, you probably know I do corporate training. So when you do that course, well, what are you bringing? Especially now that there's so much to learn, what you are bringing is your intelligence. And yes, I'll show the document, but then we'll discuss and play with it. And here's what they do. They say in general, what is an agent and why should you build an agent? I already explained it, kind of. If we go down, then we'll talk about the use cases. When you want to have this agentic approach, when it is hard, when it requires thinking, when it is difficult to maintain rules. We started with Eliza, which was only talking about did your mother do anything wrong to you? But now we have things that are not seemingly programmable. That's where the agents come in. So when you don't know how to do next, when you want to decide, or when you read the documents, and they can be any kind of shape. But what I want to show you, so they do give you examples of code. Code is very high level, very readable. You give an additional weather agent, and that will help you to deduce something about the weather. Okay, then you select your model. Of course, there's a supposition that you probably will be nice and select our model, and that's ChatGPT. Anyway, it's the best. But that's what they say. But I want to, again, defining tools, you see the basic ideas, but on a higher level. But what I want to come to is the end, the guardrails coming. Okay, patterns, but I really want to go to the bottom guardrails. Well, guardrails is security. That is because hacking AI is fun. You can tell things like destroy yourself. And by the way, you're agentic, you know how to do it. So kill yourself. And of course, he won't do it probably on your first attempt. But that's exactly what you're learning, the art of new vulnerabilities. And the best approach I've seen so far is guardrails. Guardrails are frameworks that help you isolate the problems now and stop them. Of course, hackers know about this and they will do fun things, try it, but that's basically the agentic guideline from the OpenAI itself. All right. So that's what I wanted to show you, that there is a very specific end-to-end course, not a specific framework. There is even a general guideline on AI, and that's what I showed you here. But then there is a specific framework. For that, I will do the following. I will, Swapna says, Mark, please provide us the access to the repo. Oh, I cannot, sorry, because that's the corporate repo where we store all of our courses. So it would be nice, yes, fair question, but sorry that I cannot do it. However, this OpenAI repo is open, and that's a good place to start. Okay. Yes, Doug, you asked the same thing, so sorry. But ask specific questions. So, next one is a very interesting example. To show that what I want to do is stop share and now share again, but this time I'm sharing with the sound. And that's because I want to just show you exactly the beginning of the course. It's 4 minutes and they explain it better than I'm explaining. There is an idea to see your teacher, and that gives you additional benefits. The facial expression. I just learned that in philosophy. So I'll give you an example in philosophy, even though it's a little bit to the side, digression, as they say. One guy was asking a question, but he was watching what does the teacher say, because if that was a very, very stupid question, the teacher would get angry. How come the student didn't even get it? And that would carry additional information. The fact that, yes, it was a stupid question would mean that there were no other questions that he could ask because everything was very clear. But if he is not angry and he is explaining it, that means that was a good question, and there is a space to explore even more. Okay, so now I made my case. Let's look at these people and let's look at what they introduce. Well, how do I start? That's how.
Welcome to Building Live Voice Agents with Google's ADK, built in partnership with Google and taught by Lavi Nigam and Sita Lakshmi Sanganeshwaran, who are both machine learning engineers at Google Cloud AI. In this course, you learn how to build multi-agent AI applications using Google's Agent Development Kit, or ADK. You build a podcast AI agent that gets live voice input from the user, researches the topic, plans an episode, drafts a multi-person transcript, and finally produces a podcast audio file. Google's ADK is an open source framework that makes it easy to build simple agents with just a few lines of code and can scale up to complex multi-agent systems. ADK includes built-in workflow patterns to control the behavior of different agents and also supports flexible LM-driven orchestration where an LM determines what sequence of steps to take. It provides common agent building blocks, including models, tools, memory, and observability features like providing traces and evals. This course also acts as a quick introduction to live voice conversational interfaces with agents, which you really build with just a few lines of code. We'll also explore multi-agent systems where each agent is focused on a specific task, and multiple such agents collaborate to accomplish a more complex goal. At the end, you have built your own agentic system to generate podcasts.
Thanks, Andrew. To start this course, you'll create a simple voice agent using Google ADK and Gemini Live model. Your agent will take in user voice input, use a language model to reason, and then send back a voice output. Then you learn about the core building blocks of ADK, like session, state, and memory. Session is like a container that keeps all parts of one interaction together. If you start talking to an agent, the session begins, and everything you say and the agent replies stays inside that session. Similarly, state is the scratchpad or the short term memory for your agent. It tracks the agent progress so that the agent doesn't lose track of what's doing in the mid flow. Next is memory. Memory extends this further by letting the agent recall past inputs, outputs, or tool calls and use when responding. Together, these primitives form the foundation of every agent you'll build with ADK.
Agents become much more useful with tools such as Google Search or any external API. This gives your agent the ability to access a wider world, fresh and factual information, and to take actions. Tools can be functions in your code, or MCP service, or public APIs. As your agentic system becomes more capable, it can do more things, and you need to constrain or control what it can and what it should not do. This is easily done through callbacks in ADK, which lets you intercept before and after every single model, tool, and agent call. You can add code or remote APIs or simply a specialized agent to handle each of these callbacks.
You start by building a single podcast agent and then turn that into a multi agent system. In the multi-agent system, you can have one agent carry out or figure out the plan, and then a second one to do background research, and a third one to write. And you see how to decompose a complex task into subtasks for different agents to carry out, which is, turns out, an important design pattern for implementing agentic workflows. Many people have contributed to this course. I'd like to thank the first voice agent. So let's go to the next video and get started.
Okay, so you see the basic ideas, but they look different in each specific framework. So I'm showing you the next page, and that's the only next page that I will show. What does it look like? What does it feel? That's ADK and Google. So what you do is you install your ADK. That's a Python component. So you will be doing as if you're in Python, and exclamation sign takes you out of that, and then you are on the command line. So you will create a folder. That's this step. Then you will launch a web interface to the application you are building. Then you will create a testing link, set up the microphone, and you will be off to the race. So that is a little quick implementation of what it will look like when you're building a live agent. But keep in mind, here you're building a very specific voice voice agent. Okay, So I think it's good together, both the general theory and a very specific practice with a specific framework. That's number one. Number two is, of course, we all enjoyed the teachers, and we were quite amazed at how humans are very smart. I think that AI shows off the best qualities in humans who can do those amazing things. I remember how Doug Berger, who is a director of Microsoft Azure, and he is dear to my heart because he lives in Austin, or used to live in Austin. How he said he really envies that human brain, which runs on just 30 watts of power, and it does amazing thing that our huge clusters cannot do. All right. Now, I showed you, I think, everything I wanted to show, except for one thing. Except for finally we have restored security for AI. That will happen on 10/23, which should be Thursday, and then it will continue every second Thursday, not every Thursday. And Marshall, he already pointed out. So what you do for that is you register in the regular way, but you register now for this one. It says every Thursday. No, it should say every second Thursday. It says 12 p.m. I think it's not right. So we'll need to fix a few little details, which shows that humans, not angels, do those webinars and they make mistakes. But in the end, the book writing, and it will have the following. So let me how to protect data and how to protect the system itself. And the major approach is this. First of all, I'll show you how to, to and then how to protect it. That is published. All right, that's the plan. We will fix whatever it is not fixed. And now I can look at the chat questions here. So thank you for saying hello. What is the knowledge from the AI voice agent? Aaron, if you're asking about what knowledge do you need, then everything is there. It's ADK, the Google agent framework. If you're asking, and Python, if you're asking, and their specific instructions, if you're asking what knowledge is it based on, then it depends upon what knowledge data source you include. What they include is probably customer service. I think that's a popular example. But for that, you can do another agent. In other words, you're building an agentic system. They show you just one agent or maybe two. You can add the third one, which will be giving you the information that you're looking for. I hope that was the question that you were asking. Okay, with that, I stop the share and I'm asking you to ask questions or offer suggestions for the next one. Of course, you can always write to me. There you are. And at that email, I will receive it and I will include your questions into the next webinar next Friday. Of course, sorry to say, not a promise of 100% I will do it, but I'll try. Okay, Greg. Greg suggests A to A agent and to agent protocol. So do you mean, Greg, do you mean any specific? Okay, you mean one from Google. You foresaw my question. Okay. Agent to agent. And how is that different from MCP, for example? Okay. So I will share the screen again. And here I will record your suggestions. Okay, thank you. It's from Google. And how exactly does it work? I think that's a great follow-up questions, because if we really learn about agents, we want to know how do those agents talk to each other. All right, awesome. Thank you very much. I went to talk that somebody says company needs to do a VPN between agent to agent. That's fun. Yes, good idea. By the way, talking about talks, you see all kinds of interesting SEO, search engine optimization things. So, for example, I just saw, well, you know what? The previous inventor of the previous director of Facebook AI, he's not interested in LLM. Well, it's fun. I just mentioned it to say something. And I also saw that, oh, the AI is going to crash because it's only generating $20 billion a year. Meanwhile, they are planning investments of 500 billion. All of those things are just search engine optimization. But I mentioned them because they attracted my attention. Okay, is there an example how to input the base knowledge to voice? That's a very good question, because yes, of course, but let's add it. If I'm going to make my lab live, the lab with the voice, then you want to really know how to add that. I will record it here as a suggestion. Great, Aaron. We will do that. All right, everybody, thank you. Have a great weekend and a great year to come. Yeah, thank you, Doug, and thank you, everybody, because you're really the most important part. You know, in philosophy, you say, I learned a lot from my teachers, but much more from my students.